Man, last night, number 1 Auburn wins at LSU, and LT almost agreed with me, almost 100%. I thought that was Alabama's most impressive win to date, with everything factored in. Let's see what Richard Hendrix thinks about this.
Yeah, Richard has already texted me saying he likes hearing talk about jelly and cheese on biscuits. So now he's going to talk some basketball, too.
Well, I see his mouth watering.
I've got to ask him if he would eat my creation.
Oh, wow. So we got a lot to start with Richard with that is not basketball at all. Hello, Richard. How are you today?
Doing great, guys. Thank y'all for having me. And yes, biscuits are made to be eaten sloppy. I mean, it's supposed to be jelly falling out the side. You're supposed to sop it up after a bite or two. It's not a dry situation.
Okay, I got a feeling you're going to judge me like these two because I brought up something new that I've been doing. So I will. I'll heat up the English muffin, and I got made fun of because it's an English muffin. That does sound like an old man.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then pepper jack cheese, a really good jelly, and mayonnaise.
That might be too much slop on there. I don't know about that. The mayonnaise. Yeah, I don't think mayonnaise belongs on biscuits. Yeah. And it definitely doesn't match well with jelly either. I don't know about that one.
Don't knock it till you try it, Richard.
Yeah. The mayonnaise.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to try it. So I don't know if I might need to be able to knock that one. So
I couldn't get the mayonnaise got me too. So last night, man, the atmosphere, the performance from Hubbard, all things considered. Would you call me an idiot for saying that was Alabama's most impressive win to date?
I believe so. I mean, to think about the teams they've been able to beat in that environment, and this is a really good Mississippi State team that's starting to show their abilities, and with Josh Hubbard playing his best game of the season and finally getting his shooting stroke going, I think that was a gritty win for Alabama in that environment. I mean, last night in Humphrey Coliseum, it was an amazing atmosphere. It was loud. The students were into it, and Alabama was able to weather the storm. It was an all-around team effort, and it took some big hustle plays and with spirited effort to really get it done in the clutch.
You know, Richard, I brought this up, or we brought this up yesterday with Coach Oats was on the show, and Chris Youngblood in that starting lineup. And if there was one takeaway from that game, I mean, there's a lot of takeaways from Starkville last night, but Youngblood going 30 minutes, hitting 7 threes, going for 23 points. This guy's just getting better and better.
Well, it's all about just getting in shape. And, you know, he's coming off the injury. And this is a kid that I saw last year at South Florida, and he was the AAC Player of the Year. And you could see his leadership, the ability to play multiple positions, the poise on the court. And last night, it was on full display. Every single time when Alabama needed a big bucket, he stood in there and he knocked it down with the three-pointers, 7 of them into the game. He made tough defensive plays when they needed him. And he was just money when they needed him in the clutch. So you've been able to see the ability of what he has, and it shows the depth that this Alabama team has. And it's so many players on this roster that can step up when you need them.
This may happen more than I think in a college basketball huddle or an NBA huddle or wherever, Richard, but I thought it was pretty cool. Nate Oats said after the game that Youngblood came to him and was like, let me take a crack at Hubbard and see what I can do. I mean, the guy's lighting it up. How often does somebody say, like, this guy is unstoppable? Let me take a shot at him.
I mean, listen, Josh Hubbard was unbelievable last night. And Nate Oats came out with the strategy of putting some length on him. He started Jarin Stevenson on him at 6'10". They figured that the length would give him some issues, but Hubbard did an outstanding job of utilizing those ball screens and shooting behind the screen when he was able to get a peek. And then when he was able to get the shot going from the outside, he put it on the deck and took it all the way in. So it was a collective effort that Alabama tried to use to slow him down. Just we're not able to get it done, and they just had enough energy to finish off. As Hubbard made some plays down the stretch, but they weren't the shooting plays. It was the beautiful passes that he made, but Mississippi State wasn't able to convert.
I had to go back and watch it with my own eyes last night because I was so wired after the game, just to remember I didn't make it up and it wasn't a mirage. But I went back and watched the highlights of the Elite Eight game last year and saw Jarin Stevenson have a great offensive night and scored 19 points. I know his role is big on this team in different ways. If you could talk to Jarin Stevenson right now and offer him veteran advice, what would it be? Because he is starting to struggle more and more offensively. What would the advice be?
Well, I'm from the old schools. It's always going to be when you're 6'10", you need to get a shot close to the basket to get yourself going. I mean, he has so much talent, but oftentimes when you're taking the 3-pointers, you have to be able to see one go through the rim to get your rhythm and confidence. he's going to have the size advantage playing the 3 over anyone that he plays. And the best way to get that going is to get on the offensive glass, get an easy putback, get fouled, and go to the free throw line. If he grows his game from the inside out, then he will then be able to see the ability that he has and realize he has a mismatch at every aspect of the court. You add that with the post play that he can use and shooting directly over the top of the defender, then I think he'll be more effective. It'll also make Alabama a better team because, he has some ability that obviously the coaching staff sees in him. And it's not just on the offensive end, it's on the defensive end. And if he can tap into that, he's an X factor that can really make a big difference in this team.
You talk about team, and there's so many elements that go into that, as you know, Richard. And it was such a big storyline coming out of Saturday night with Sears sitting on the bench in that second half in the win over LSU. And another conversation we got into with Coach Nate Oats yesterday was the relationship with Mark Sears. He goes 35 minutes, scores 17, has the 9 assists, turned it over 7 times. And you've been around Mark Sears. Looking at him, body language, did it seem business as usual for Mark Sears last night?
Yeah, he definitely seemed dialed in. And this is obviously a great kid who's had a tremendous career everywhere that he's played. But I think that it was a learning lesson, not only for Mark Sears, but to be able to see that Nate Oats was able to get his attention. It shows the ability that he has, the luxury of having the depth on the roster, and the fact that he was able to have that communication within private to get things turned around. I think it's a situation that a lot of people made far more big deal out of it than what it really is. When you're on a talented team, playing time is not always a guarantee. You got 10 players that can play, and coaches have to do everything they can within their power to win the game. And if you have a roster that you can trust multiple players, then if you're not getting it done, then, it's likely that the coach will go to the next man on the bench. But the response last night for Mark Sears was spot on. You see, he started out the game facilitating. He made a lot of plays for others, and then he made big-time plays in the clutch when they needed him with his outside shooting. So this is just something that I think is a very small thing on a high-level team, but they've all been able to learn from it, and hopefully it'll be something that can help spur them to help them achieve their goals.
Before we put this game aside, I had great respect for Mississippi State going into this game. I have more respect coming out of this game. You were there in person. I don't think that basketball team has to worry about anything. It's a second weekend at least NCAA tournament team, in my opinion, too. What do you think?
They can be, and particularly if they're hitting shots from the outside with Josh Hubbard. He had struggled in recent games and not had a game in, I believe, about 6 or 7 games where he shot over 50%. And now last night he was finally able to get it going and shot it well from the outside, 40%, 6 of 15 from the three-point line. So when they're able to get that outside production, they're a really good team because Chris Jans' MO is going to lock you down defensively. Now, they don't have the big men that he's had in years past that can slow the game down and play at a different pace. So they've been able to outpace teams. They actually shot more shots than Alabama did last night, which shows their ability to get up and down. But this is a dangerous team, but they're going to have to make shots from the outside. And if Cam Matthews, who's a glue guy that I said in the broadcast last night, has a lot of similarities to Grant Nelson, if he can get into form where he's creating for others, being a defensive stopper and having some point production, Mississippi State will be a tough out in March.
Okay, this would have sounded like a really ridiculous question a couple of weeks ago. It might still, but more important, sophomore coming off the bench for Alabama moving forward once we get into late February, March. Is it Aiden Holloway with that offense, or is it Diabate?
Oh, wow. They're equally important.
Why do we have to choose?
Ways.
Why do we have to choose?
And listen, like I've said before, on high-level teams, people have to understand it's not just about your superstars. You have a roster full of really talented players, and it's about working your minutes. And Mo Diabate is a star in what he does. This guy had 7 offensive rebounds last night. And the switch that Nate Oats made in the rebounding situation in the last minutes of the game to get that offensive board was a critical call that you see that he was able to dial up. Diabate right there on the spot to get another hustle play. You got to have a player like that when you're playing in a rock fight, and a tough team like Mississippi State or potential teams that they'll play against down the line, Grand Canyon last year in the NCAA tournament, Mo Diabate is the type player that can help you win those games. Now, at the same time, you got to have a money type shooter who can create his own shot like Aiden Holloway. He's been shooting lights out. He can handle it off the pick and roll. He can create separation on his own. And when the confidence is high, he can shoot it just as well as anyone in the league. So you have to have that combination of different types of players who come off the bench and deliver when you need it.
Richard Hendrix on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline. I know you were in Starkville, not in Baton Rouge, but Johni Broome, coming back from that injury in 2 games, has played 33 minutes in both games, 42 and 30, and 7 blocked shots. You know what it's like to carry around a big frame on a leg that might be injured a little bit. Those are pretty remarkable numbers.
Yeah, they are. I mean, I didn't really buy too in it when I thought he was going to be on a pitch count in the first comeback game. It's a huge game for Auburn to play against Tennessee, and you got to have your star player out there. And when you start competing, you don't feel the pain. You're in the moment, and you got to do what it can to win, do what it takes to win. But Johni Broome is phenomenal, and in a style of play nowadays where teams do not have a big man to go against him, to put the pressure on him on the offensive side where he has to guard, he's a luxury, and he's a difference maker. He's almost a unicorn in the game where no one throws it in the post. And that's the big difference that allows Auburn to be able to have that type of play style when they can play in so many different ways. And he's back in this top-notch form.
They're 7-0, 4-0 on the road in the SEC, on the road this weekend at Ole Miss. Why do I think this is a losable game for Auburn? Why do I think Ole Miss can get them on Saturday?
Well, because Ole Miss is good, first and foremost. I mean, you have a coach who's been to the national championship game. Alabama fans have been able to see what Ole Miss is able to do on the defensive end to come in Tuscaloosa and held Alabama to a low number of points and to get a win. So this is a team that's going to be motivated. They have really good players. They have veteran players on their roster: Matthew Morrell, Juju Murray, Jalen Brakefield, who've been there before, who's played for Chris Beard for a year. And then you'd have a low post threat in Malik Dia, who can maybe give a little bit of resistance to Johni Broome on the low block. I mean, so he's got some transfers on this team. He's got some really good guys. Padula at the point guard, Davis coming in from Seton Hall, who won an NIT. He's got a good roster. So this is going to be a game that Auburn's really going to have to play at their best to get it done. But listen, Auburn is playing good basketball, and the schedule looks favorable for them. And you see Alabama with the win, probably will slide up in the rankings. This thing seems to be poised for both of these teams to be on a collision course when they meet to try to see who's going to be in first place. And I believe that was a big reason why Nate Oats had to get Alabama's attention, because he understands that in order to keep the pace in this league, you're going to have to get it done and with tough wins, because Auburn seems to be handling their business.
Does playing Tennessee's defense prepare you for playing Chris Beards in such a short window? You play them 1 week apart?
It's similar. I mean, you're going to have the physicality, and you'll also have the pace, which is important, that you can play with. I mean, Tennessee was the Kai Ziegler. He can control the game. He brings it up the court slowly. He puts people where they need to be. It was just a matter that they were not able to hit shots in their recent performances. But, that's a good test for Auburn moving forward. But every game is a good test in the SEC this year. And Alabama, on the flip side, will find out this weekend when they play on a tough and physical Georgia team. There's not a night off in the SEC.
Back to Starkville last night. This is very random, but you were a former front court player. The kid from Toronto, the Michael Noka kid.
Yeah.
How much potential do you think he has moving forward? Really didn't play many minutes last year for Miami, but just watching him in spots, man, he's so active and long. He's got good hands. He's very athletic. He just seems like there's a ton of upside for that kid.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Michael Nwokoro, he's physical down low. And when he gets it around the basket, he goes up with a lot of force to finish with high-level dunks. He has to develop a little bit more touch around the basket as far as his moves are concerned with back-to-the-basket moves. I would also like to see a little bit more fluidity within him, the pick and roll. A lot of times it's a little bit more technique when players are playing in the pick and roll. I think people think it's just a matter of setting a screen and running fast and someone can find you. But you have to have some agility. You have to read the situation. You have to know how to create space. And then can you finish with good catches and finish above the rim? Those are the elements that he's going to have to develop in his game, but he definitely has the physique to be an impactful big in the SEC.
Who do you have Saturday, Richard? Where will you be?
I'll be in Tuscaloosa on the call when Georgia comes to town. So we've been getting paired a lot with Alabama, but I guess it's nice when you got a top 5 team to be on the call for.
Hey, man, they're pretty fun to watch. All right, so see Richard from Coleman Coliseum, a place he used to roam the court a good bit there as Alabama takes on Georgia Saturday. Always great with the time. And listen, I know that was a late night, quick turnaround. We really appreciate you doing this for us today.
Well, thank you, guys. I always enjoy it.
Who was the young man that was play-by-play with you last night? He was really talented.
Young man, how old are you, young man?
Well, I mean, to me, but he did seem like he was maybe 30.
John Shriffen was his name. That's who I've been partnered with a lot lately. So we have pretty good energy. It's been a lot of fun to call games along.
Really good tandem there. Every time, though, I would do the on-camera shot, he looked very cold, like he was dressed in layers. I was wondering if it was cold inside the building. I was like,
he has a little bit more style than I do. I'm a little bit more basic guy, but I guess you can say he has a little bit more swag.
Don't forget, Mississippi State's got that ice down for the hockey team, right?
I was like,
cool.
are we doing this game outside? I mean, he's got layers on over there with him. Okay.
All right, Richard. Thank you, man. Have a great day. We'll see you from Tuscaloosa on Saturday.
Thank you, guys. Take care.
All right, buddy. You too. We appreciate it. Richard Hendrix with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline.